Test. All right, we're on. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Football Forecast, episode number 2 on this beautiful Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, like every Tuesday, July 30th. We're about less than a week away from the start of football again, with the Hall of Fame game on Thursday night at, I believe, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, we are back into the football season. Really, and when you really look at it, we're back into the football season, and we're ready to watch some football again. And we're here. We're done with the off season. Talking about camps and all these things, and talking about these contract negotiations and trades and free agency. All that is almost over. We're almost there. Talking about game analysis and the things that happen on game day, big plays, players, all kinds of stuff. We're almost there. We're almost at that time. Thursday night, folks. It's going to be a good time. Leading into that, that's actually what we're going to, start with today is the Hall of Fame game that's going on Thursday night. Being the start of football season, it's very important that we have a good game, that we have just good depth in that game, and we get to see a lot of stuff that that people really like to see in preseason games, because preseason games are universally criticized for being very boring because it's mostly just depth, testing out new players, your backups, your different strings, just your depth chart, trying to exercise the depth that you have. So universally they're criticized for being boring, but this game between the Denver Broncos and the Atlanta Falcons should be a pretty good preseason game, a pretty good Hall of Fame game. And that is because, in my opinion, because of Mr. Drew Lock. So Drew Lock was drafted by the Denver Broncos out of Missouri, right? Mizzou? That's where Drew Lock was out of,
yes.
Mizzou?
Yeah, Missouri, right.
And so coming to Denver, it was unaware at the time that or before that, when people were talking about Drew Lock, who was going to be the starting quarterback in Denver, because with all this mess with Case Keenum and the quarterback situation, but then we learned it to be Joe Flacco. I think many Denver fans probably had a problem with that, a while after that was, announced and that information was released. But I think the NFL community took a problem with that a little bit after that information was released, and that's because we saw just how much of a bad teammate and a bad athlete and a bad NFL player that Joe Flacco was. He had a lot to say about his other quarterbacks that he has the mentor. And he said it's not his job to be a mentor. It's not his job to be a teacher. It's his job to, go out and win games. And that's, entirely not true. You're not being paid just to be a starting quarterback. You're being paid to, be a franchise guy and lead the team. So leading into that, Drew Lock was drafted by the Denver Broncos. And now we're expecting to see, or we want to see, a QB competition. I think everybody now, after what Joe Flacco said, if you keep up with the Denver Broncos or, NFL in general, I think now, you would like to see some kind of competition between any, backups in the NFL or in the Broncos and with Joe Flacco. But it looks like that's not going to happen because Drew Lock is third string in the Hall of Fame game depth chart for Thursday, and that's not even including Joe Flacco. So by the looks of it now, Drew Lock is a fourth-string quarterback. So he is being passed by Kevin Hogan and another quarterback that I didn't catch the name of, but another backup quarterback. But that guy that is backing up Kevin Hogan can't be any good at all because Kevin Hogan's stats were terrible. He had 4 touchdowns his entire career, and he's been in the league for, I think, 3 to 4 years, maybe 2015, so it might be 4. I believe it said 2015. So, regardless, Drew Lock seems to not have shown up in training camp if he can't pass those two guys, or something of the sorts, because he's going to be a third string in the Hall of Fame game, which means we're going to get to see him. But I think many Broncos fans, and even NFL fans, were hoping to see the first round pick right? First round pick. The Broncos' first pick to be somebody, to be, somewhere, for them at the beginning to kind of, replace all this mess with Joe Flacco.
Well, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see plenty of Drew Lock in the preseason, and and everybody knows going in that he's not going to compete for the starting quarterback job. That's clearly is going to belong to Joe Flacco, based on his experience. And the fact they brought him in, the money they're going to pay him, he's obviously going to be the guy unless something happens, unless he just plays terribly or if he gets injured. He's going to be the starting quarterback. I'm sure at least in the opening preseason game, you will probably see Drew Lock play. I would think at least for a quarter, maybe quarter and a half.
I think so.
Flacco will probably play. He may play the entire first quarter. And that's probably all you're going to see of him. But you'll certainly see Drew Lock play some. You'll probably see him a good bit throughout the preseason. But I would have to think that he is probably firmly entrenched as their number 3 quarterback. I'm sure that the Broncos coach is not going to be comfortable giving the backup job to a guy who's never played in an NFL game. So, and that may change as they go through preseason camp. He may play well enough. They may name him as a number 2 quarterback after the preseason's over. But, until you've at least seen him in action in some preseason games, that's probably, the smart thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's definitely not what we saw in Kansas City with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes, not the situation at all. And it looks like Drew Lock is just going to end up being a Daniel Jones type of quarterback, which is not what they wanted to see. I think a lot of people were, saying Drew Lock was going to border on the Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones thing. A lot of people were, expecting to see which side he teeters to. Is he going to be a starter right out of the gate, or is he going to be somebody that is mentored? And now it looks like nobody really, knows for sure if he's going to sit back there for years and, never touch the field. But he's definitely not starting. So that brings us to, looking at his stats, and just overall what kind of quarterback he is. In college, he passed around 3,500 yards his last 2 seasons in college with 44 touchdowns in 2017 and 28 in 2018. So he's a good quarterback, right? But he's never touched an NFL field. So like you said, I don't think they're going to be comfortable giving him the backup job. So, it does seem right for him to be third string, in the Hall of Fame game. But I'm really excited just overall to see what he does. That's a guy that I would like to see bring some kind of competition to Joe Flacco. So that's a reason why I would pay attention to this game on Thursday, and just a reason why I hope I can watch the whole thing. Especially because the Falcons are in it and things like that, and the Falcons with their new depth on the D line and also their new offensive line rookies. It's going to be a great matchup to see and to watch. To kind of evaluate how these teams are going to do for the rest of the season, or how good this depth is for both teams. So yeah, that's really the Hall of Fame game. We're looking forward to that. We'll have a lot more to talk about next Tuesday after we actually watch the game. We can tell you guys about what happened and give you kind of our opinions on what we saw and things like that in our analysis. But yeah, I mean it's gonna be a great game. I would hope for a preseason matchup. It should be good. Should defy the odds of a preseason matchup. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, so I guess still revolving around the NFL here for a little bit. So former NFL running back O.J. Simpson has announced his endorsement for a successful contract for Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott and LA Chargers running back Melvin Gordon. O.J. Simpson said Elliott has outperformed his rookie contract and called for the Cowboys to pay this man. I mean, I would listen to O.J. Simpson if I was anybody. I would probably listen to O.J. Simpson just because of his past and how controversial that player is. Yeah, I would probably have to put some thought into that. But yeah, no, all seriousness, Elliott recorded stats of 1,434 yards last year, averaging 4.7 yards a carry, topping that off with 6 touchdowns, which begs the question, should we listen to O.J. Simpson? Should Jerry Jones listen and, be rushing to pay Zeke? Is that something that the Cowboys should do this year?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I say the same thing. I don't think so. He's not where he was 2 years ago at the top of the league. Saquon came in as a rookie and took the number one spot for a running back in the entire league. Saquon's one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game already after playing for 1 year. He's the number one running back in the NFL. And he took that spot from Zeke, and I don't even think Zeke would be in the top 3 anymore.
Well, you got two things right now that are really working against Ezekiel Elliott in that argument about how he should be paid his money. Number one, he's going to cut all the stupid stuff away from the field. You had the incident earlier this year in Las Vegas. You had the other incident last year where he was suspended for X number of games for that situation. So he's got to clean all that off-field stuff up. He's got to get himself straight. He's got to quit doing stupid stuff, because as far as his performance on the field, that's not an issue. But if he wants to get his money, he's going to have to clean up the stuff he's got going on off the field and quit doing stupid things that get him in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. If he can do that, and if he can really ball out and have like an awesome season, he will get his money. But Jerry Jones is a smart guy. He didn't get to be rich. He didn't get to be able to be, to buy and be the owner of the Dallas Cowboys for not being a good business person, not having good business sense. He knows, first of all, that running back is not a premier position in the league. Running backs are a dime a dozen. Even when you have good ones come along, when it comes draft time, you don't usually see very many running backs drafted real high because there's not a premium put on that position. You can always go out and find you a decent running back if you need one. There's always plenty of them out there. There's always guys that you can trade for. There's always guys that you can get, that you can draft in middle to lower rounds, that can come in and do a serviceable job. And there's a lot, most running backs in the league are not the focal point of their offense. There are some guys who are because of their skills. Le'Veon Bell comes to mind because not only is he a very good running back, but he's also an excellent receiver coming out of the backfield, and he's been strongly utilized that way for several years for the Steelers.
I think that's the new meta in the NFL is the wide receiver, the running backs that can catch balls like wide receivers. Right. I think that's now people are trying to look for a premium to put on them, and that's what it is. So that's why I would agree with that.
Yeah, and Zeke doesn't catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. And that may be, I'm not sure if that's because he's just not a great hands guy. He's not a good receiver. Or it could be that their offense just isn't designed to get the running back the ball that much in that way. But if he can come out and have a great year and put the other stuff behind him, he'll get his money. But Jerry Jones, there's only so much money to go around. You can't pay everybody top dollar. You have to have a salary cap, and you have to kind of put most of your money behind the guys who are going to carry your team, who are the highest priority. And for any team, that's going to be your quarterbacks. That's going to be your top one or two receivers. Important positions like left or right tackle, depending on what, if your quarterback's left or right-handed. Defensive ends are priority. Linebackers with speed that can play on the outside and cover are priority. Cornerbacks, guys mostly that play on the outside are going to be your priority positions. And it's a passing league. It's just not a running league
anymore. Yeah.
You can have a good running back and you can win running the football. If you have a good defense and things that go along with it. But nobody is. There aren't very many teams out there looking to get or sign a top running back because most teams' offenses just aren't centered around that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% with that last comment. The NFL now, if you would pay attention to any games, watch any single game, whether it be Super Bowl 53 to the first game of the Rams season last year. The NFL is not a league where you can go out and draft a running back and to save your entire season. We saw that with Saquon Barkley. Can you draft a wide receiver and save your whole season? Maybe it's possible if you have a decent quarterback. somebody to throw to. A quarterback can certainly save your entire season. We saw that with Patrick Mahomes. It's just, the running back position just has no value to it compared to what it used to be. So I don't think the Cowboys should be scrambling to pay Zeke right now. I think when I look at the Cowboys, it sounds bizarre to say this, but when I look at the Cowboys, I would pay Amari Cooper first, way earlier than I would pay Zeke. Amari Cooper is just somebody that even Nick Saban says is one of the best athletes he's ever coached. And besides that, like we said, the wide receiver is still a position that has some premier to it, some value. So that's a player that needs to be paid, a player that made Dak Prescott look like an entirely different quarterback last year. So that's a player that definitely needs to be paid first. With the loss of Ezekiel Elliott, and let's say not paying him turned into that, what's the worst that could happen? The Cowboys would be left without a running back that doesn't get into trouble very much. They would be left without a running back that is good, top 5 in the league, but they could find a replacement such as Tariq Cohen.
They would have a replacement running back who they could probably get 3.5 to 4 yards to carry out of, and they would just put. They would have to put more of the offense onto their passing game. They'd be more pass heavy than run versus what they've been with Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah. They would just adjust their offense. They would go with what they their best options as far as moving the football and.
With the offensive line that they have, which is already one of the best in the NFL, I mean, they would have a great time. They could end up being a playoff winner.
They would just basically try to run ball enough to keep defenses honest, and they would depend on Dak Prescott to execute a good short to medium range passing game. You got Jason Witten coming back, so you've got him there as a weapon.
Safety valve.
No, you got Amari Cooper. And they got a couple of good receivers. I mean, so that's basically how their offense would work if Ezekiel Elliott continues to hold out and doesn't come back anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean that's what you really have to look at. You have to look at this situation as if what if I didn't pay Zeke? What if I paid Amari Cooper instead? That's what would happen. Well, what if you didn't pay Amari Cooper and you paid Zeke? Well, you'd have a running back that's great, a premier running back, top 5, top 3 in the league. That can do some phenomenal things. But the NFL is not a running league anymore. You can't run the ball and rely on that as a weapon. So you couldn't score very many points. You couldn't outscore teams or anything like that. You would have no wide receiver there to make any of these passes that Dak Prescott, which as much as I like to say he's not an elite quarterback yet, he still is a good quarterback. He's a great quarterback, and I would be anybody would be very glad to have him on their team, but there would be nobody for him to throw to. So I think it's just a situation of who's worth more, who's worth your time more, who's worth the effort more, and who's worth more of the media attention. I don't think Zeke is that, so I don't think they should be rushing for that. They have more problems to worry about without all of that drama. And if they want to get anywhere, if the Cowboys want to get anywhere, it's the same thing with the Saints. They can't be worried about all of this, contract drama. They have to be worried about business. I think that's something that the Falcons and the Panthers have in common, that they kind of, don't worry about, all these holdouts and the drama and the contract negotiations and things like that. But teams like the Saints and the Cowboys now are going to ruin their infrastructure by doing these little these tiny moves. So hopefully this works out for the Cowboys. Hopefully Zeke kind of finds his mind. I don't think Jerry Jones and the rest of the squad in the office should go ahead and give him that money yet. But I definitely think that they do have some kind of negotiating to do with their offensive weapons. Regardless, sit down with literally all of them and find out what that is going to be, because the Cowboys could be something different this year that we haven't seen. So yeah, that's that. Zeke, great running back, but not sure if he should be paid right out of the gate. Shouldn't be rushing around to do that. All right, so just a couple quick topics for I guess we move into the college football world over here. So A.J. Green for the Bengals is expected to miss multiple regular season games due to an ankle injury. Green recorded 694 yards last year with 15.1 yards a carry and 6 touchdowns. So that looks very bad for the Bengals. The Bengals already have not been one of the very hot teams in the league in the past 5 years. They've looked like the Jaguars, primarily because they rely on a quarterback too much that is not elite, never will be elite. A guy that they say, oh, I want this to be the guy. He's going to be the guy this year. He's going to be the guy this year, I promise. And then he never ends up being the guy. He always has, underperformed. He's always underperformed his expectations. And I'm talking about Andy Dalton, of course. And there's no way that the Bengals will be successful in the future as a playoff team if they do not move on from Andy Dalton. So already, that is my opinion on the Bengals. So when you take away A.J. Green, you can see my opinion now is, last week we were talking about the worst team, who can be the worst team. I didn't even mention the Bengals. But right now, I am currently looking at the Bengals as the worst team in the NFL next year. Because where did their Vontaze Burfict go? The Raiders.
Yeah.
So that was their best player on their team, right? I mean, you would agree that, like, Vontaze Burfict was probably their best player.
Yeah, when he could stay out of trouble and on the field, he was definitely one of their best players, no problem.
So this looks terrible for the Bengals. And I'm so mad at Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati fans should be mad, too, about what they've done, for their team. And it just sucks not having A.J. Green. A.J. Green's a great wide receiver. I freaking love watching this dude. I absolutely love watching A.J. Green. I wish he wasn't on such a badly managed team. But I already feel very strongly against the Bengals for what they did with A.J. McCarron. Completely got rid of somebody that won them a playoff game without Andy Dalton to be there to do anything. And the fact that they've relied on Andy Dalton like the Jags relied on Blake Bortles for so long. That's just somebody that they should not rely on, that they will every year because they want a franchise guy. The league now is so quarterback-centered, like we were just talking about with running backs earlier. Quarterbacks are beginning to get to that point where there is a quarterback for every single team now. You already saw Nick Foles went to the Jaguars because Blake Bortles is now on the Rams. He's probably somewhere else now. Last time I checked, he was a backup on the Rams. So when we look there, quarterback it's almost looking like a dime a dozen position. Even though the quarterback position is very very heavily looked at as the leader of the team, the coach on the field. Now it's not like it's a dime a dozen, but it's inexcusable to have a guy that underperforms his expectations every single year and say, this is our guy this year. This is our guy. We're going to make him, the highest paid quarterback in the league. This is our guy. That's just a very unexcusable argument. I already feel strongly against the Bengals for that. Now, without A.J. Green, I will go ahead and say right now and correct my statement from last week. I think the Bengals will be the worst team in the NFL this year because of this move. Because of the past moves with Andy Dalton and now A.J. Green, missing multiple regular season games, which could turn into more. And you saw with Earl Thomas last year, injuries can turn into holdouts, and holdouts can turn into switching teams. So that's going to look very bad for the Bengals. So yeah, that's my expectations from that. Is the Bengals will probably drop down to number 32.
Yeah, I mean, obviously losing A.J. Green it greatly hurts them. A.J. Green overall is the best player on that team. If you look at all the position on the team, he's their best player overall. And you look at a franchise who, in recent years, has generally drafted pretty well. They generally have a pretty decent collection of talent on their roster. They just never really can seem to get it all together. Every few years, at least every 3 or 4 years anyway, they'll make the playoffs, but they don't do anything. They can't win a playoff game when they do get there. And they just seem to be one of those programs that just are teams that just it's kind of mired in mediocrity. They've got a few guys that can play. They're not going to be one of the worst teams in the league because they got too much talent to be one of the worst. But they can't seem to get to a point where they can get over the hump and get to the playoffs and actually at least win a playoff game and show that they're at least getting better. They're just kind of one of those blah teams. They're just kind of every year they're going to show up. They're going to win probably somewhere, 6, 7, 8 games, somewhere in that area. And it's just kind of what they do. That's just their thing.
That's where the Jaguars were at for a while, was that same position. And I'm telling you, there is a common theme between those teams that do that is relying on a quarterback that is not going to be your guy. And it's just, it's like seriously sickens me to see that they are wasting years of these guys' contracts relying on Andy Dalton, somebody that doesn't get any balls to anybody except A.J. Green. Just wasting these guys' years on this team and just, relying on this guy, putting him above everybody else. So I don't like that. I don't even like the Bengals, after all of Andy Dalton's, failures and mistakes. But, it sucks for A.J. Green. I really hope he finds a new team. I really hope he gets on a new team, such as the Dolphins next year or something. I really hope. I don't know his contract situation. I probably should have researched it before I went into the podcast today, but I'll probably do it in a little bit and then bring it back up at the end of the episode. But I really hope he finds a new team. And I don't know if any Bengals fans are watching this, but, I would be mad if I were you. I'm not joking.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think this season here coming up, I think is the last year of his current contract, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he should be this is his 9th season overall coming up. If I'm not mistaken, this may be the last year of his current contract. Especially if he was to come back and have a real good year, I would have to think he might be looking to make a move and maybe get on the winner, because usually when these guys start getting toward the latter part of their career, and he's, right now this is probably his peak time of his career. Yeah. He's probably right in the middle of his prime. And usually when guys get to that point, they're looking for that last big contract. They're looking to go to a team where they can hopefully at least get the playoffs, maybe and get the chance to play for and win a Super Bowl. So you have that's probably in the back of his mind somewhere.
I'm saying the Dolphins. Dolphins tank this year. Tank completely. Win 0 games. Draft Tua in the 2020 NFL Draft. And then get A.J. Green in the offseason. And then you will win Super Bowl 55. Regardless of how many games you win, you will win Super Bowl 55. That is what the Miami Dolphins should do. I really hope they get A.J. Green. That's a perfect place for him to go.
That might be what the Giants are going to do. Cause I think right now, more and more every day, it's looking hands down like the Giants are going to be the worst team in the league. So the Giants may well end up with the number 1 pick in the next draft, and almost certainly, if that's the case, they're going to end up drafting a quarterback. Not sure who that would be. I'm not sure if it would be
Daniel Jones too.
It would be Tua,
Jake Fromm,
or Justin Herbert,
Jake Fromm.
I don't think it'd be Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm.
If they got Daniel Jones, then
yeah, but what if Daniel Jones is just not anywhere near what they thought he would be? I'm sure that the Giants be in the market to draft another quarterback. Because that's something that you have to. If you want to be successful in the NFL and you want to win and compete for championships, you can't do it without a top quarterback.
I'm going to take care of our audio problem downstairs, and while I'm doing that, you can go ahead and switch the topics up to college football, and go ahead and begin your topics that you had, for today. And we'll go ahead and switch it to college football for you guys. And I'm gonna go take care of our audio difficulties downstairs real quick, and I'll be right back.
All right. Well, switching gears, of course, we've already got the NFL training camp started up, so everybody's focused on NFL, looking forward to the season. We're already talking about some players holding out. Some players are being held out of practice because they sustained some minor injuries. You probably heard about Andrew Luck. He's going to be held out for a couple of weeks because of a calf injury. Julio Jones has announced that he's not going to be playing any of the Falcons preseason games because he said he practices like he plays, so he's going to be ready for the season opener anyway. Tyreek Hill went down with a calf injury, so he's going to be out for a little while. But talking about that, here pretty quick here in the next few days, we're going to be opening fall camp for a lot of the college football teams. There's a few teams that have already started fall practice. Because a few teams that are actually opening the season, playing the first games on August 24th. So you do have a handful of games that particular day. The most notable of those games is going to be Miami versus Florida playing in Orlando. And that is, again, on the 24th. So talking about the first game is actually only about 25 days away from now. So that will be here before you know it. And I was just perusing over some of the information. getting ready for the college season as well as the NFL. Um, you got some different publications and some different online sources as well, putting out their projected top 25 list. And of course, everybody's just going to look a little bit different. But when you look at the top teams, there's not really a huge difference. I've noticed one on here that a projected AP top 25 that was put out by the Bleacher Report. Usually the first AP poll or the first major college polls, along with the other ESPN poll that usually comes out, usually right about the middle of August. And I was looking at this projected AP top 25, and and these teams, you can argue a little bit about the order, but as far as the general order overall, you can't really have a lot of issue with it. They got Clemson starting the season at number 1. They got Alabama at 2, Georgia 3, Oklahoma 4, Ohio State 5. I mean, if you look at anybody's top 5, it's going to have those teams in some order. Almost everybody's going to have Clemson, Alabama 1 and 2. Georgia, Oklahoma, and Ohio State, you can probably have in some sort of order there at 3, 4, and 5. I think they probably got Georgia right at number 3. I would probably put Ohio State ahead of Oklahoma at 4 and make Oklahoma 5. At least Ohio State. Ohio State's a pretty solid team overall. I think the big question with them is going to be at quarterback. But you look at every position on their team, they're in pretty good shape. They do have a pretty good defense, certainly much better than Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to have a great offense. I think Jalen Hurts will come there with Oklahoma, and he'll do really well. I think it may be a little bit more of a running aspect, a little bit more of an RPO.
RPO, yeah.
Looking type thing with their offense, but they're going to score a ton of points.
Jalen Hurts is going to kill Oklahoma with his RPOs.
Yeah. I mean, even Oklahoma defense improves a little bit. Even they just come out and have an average defense. Their offense is going to be so good. And with the other, poor defenses that they generally have to face in the Big 12, I think they're going to run through that league unbeaten. I don't see anybody beating them. The only team I could see even challenging them in the Big 12 would be Texas. And personally, I think Texas is overrated. A lot of people saw Texas play Georgia and beat them in the Sugar Bowl last year. And
I mean, they did lose the SEC championship to Alabama in a way that they shouldn't have lost. So, I mean, I think a lot of people forget, what happens in bowl games, and that's that. Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. People all, in the SEC are all talking about it.
That's what SEC teams do. They lose the SEC championship. The loser of that championship game goes to the Sugar Bowl, and obviously they're so dejected, and at that point they don't care anymore. So they don't probably prepare and get up for the game like they should, and whoever they play in the Sugar Bowl, they end up losing to. So
I mean, on top of that, you don't put your starting players in that bowl. Why would you? It's just like a preseason game. You got a lot of draft stock in there that you don't want them to get hurt. And it is college football, so it really shouldn't be like that. But it's just one game out of the year that's like that. It's no other games that, really revolve around that. But, yeah, Texas, I do agree, overrated. I think that's a shot in the dark for
and then the other top 10 teams here, you got Texas out there, but I don't think Texas is a top 10 team. But they also got LSU. LSU has a chance to be really good. They're going to have a very good defense. They've got an experienced guy playing quarterback who is really not a playmaker. He's more of a game manager. There's nothing wrong with that. There's been plenty of teams out there over the years who have done very well winning with game managing quarterbacks. Some have won national championships with game managing quarterbacks.
This is something that LSU really hasn't had in a while as a quarterback that's been looked up to this much. I mean, this guy's been looked up to for a while now, and I think LSU fans are really thinking this guy can, turn them around just a little bit and put some points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow should be definitely better. He's got the year of experience under his belt. He played pretty well in their bowl game when they beat UCF. Mm-hmm. So I think he'll be better this year. I don't view him as just a guy that you can put the offense on his shoulders and expect him to carry you.
Definitely.
They're still going to rely heavily on their running game. But I think they put a lot of focus on trying to make their passing game better. So if they can do that and become more balanced, they're really going to be tough. They're obviously going to be Alabama's toughest competition coming out of the SEC West. But if you look across all the conferences in the country, college football right now is kind of top heavy. You've got 6, 7, 8 really good teams, and after that, it kind of drops off, and you kind of get to just a whole bunch of teams that are kind of 8, 9 win kind of teams, and then it drops off after that. I mean, if you look at the different conferences, you look at ACC. I mean, it's really not even worth talking about. Clemson is by far and away the best team in that conference.
There's nobody that can compete with them.
I don't see anybody that's going to be competitive or is going to compete with them. Even you look at Clemson's schedule. I mean, their toughest competition is going to be in September. They have to play their second game against Texas A&M, and then after that, they play the next week at Syracuse. And you go past that, I mean, the only team I can see even on their schedule after that that could even possibly challenge them, and I'm saying it from a talent and an athletic standpoint, would be Florida State. And nobody knows what you're going to get from Florida State. Everybody knows how poorly they played last year. And I'm not sure how much better you can expect them to be this year, but you got to look at Clemson ACC. I think it's going to be Alabama and Georgia fighting out in the SEC championship game again. You got some other good teams there. LSU is going to be really good, but until LSU proves that they can put some points on the board in games that really matter, they're not going to challenge Alabama.
I don't think there's anybody there that really could. But
Auburn's going to be good. Auburn have really good defense, but again, you have no idea who their quarterback's going to be.
It's always a problem with Auburn.
And coaching is always an issue, and they got some guys. I mean, they got guys there that they've recruited that can run and catch the ball and all that, but you don't have like any really playmakers or guys that stand out. Florida, I think Florida's going to be good, but I think they're certainly not at the level Georgia is. You look at Big 12, I think it's going to be basically Texas and Oklahoma battling it out there, but I think Oklahoma is still a way better team than Texas is. I think Texas, again, is an overrated team. I think they got a lot of players to replace, especially on defense. Yeah, they got a good quarterback, and I think they'll be able to put some points on the board. But they also got to be. They also got to take the next step, and they got to prove that they can win the games they're supposed to win. I know last year they had a couple of games where they played teams that they should have easily beaten and did not. So they've got to kind of take the next step and win the games they're supposed to. If they can do that, then you may have to worry about them in the Big 12. But I still think that's Oklahoma's conference to lose. Big 10, again, you've got 2 or 3 pretty good teams, and the rest of the teams you just kind of blah. They're just a whole collection of teams. They're probably going to win, anywhere from 5 to 8 games. I think that's going to be an Ohio State-Michigan battle. I think you have to give the edge there to Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh, who I think is a coach that's really come to the season on the hot seat, he's got to beat Ohio State. He hasn't done it. This is his 5th season in Ann Arbor. And if he's ever going to beat Ohio State, this is going to be your Urban Meyer's gone. He obviously, I don't think, if Michigan Ohio State played 100 times and it's Harbaugh going against Urban Meyer, I don't think Harbaugh would ever beat him. It's just, sometimes some coaches just can't beat other coaches.
Just tradition, yeah.
Yeah, but...
but to Ohio State.
With that game being played in Ann Arbor this year, and with that coaching change at Ohio State, Michigan, I think, has a chance to have a pretty good team. Maybe this year that he finally gets that win and gets over the hump, beating Ohio State. So we'll have to see about that. And then you got a handful of teams battling out in the Pac-12, but I don't think any of those teams are probably going to be prominent when you talk about the national championship race. I think Oregon has a chance to be good. Utah, I think, is a team that has a chance to win that whole conference. And when you think of top teams, you don't usually think of a team like Utah, but they do have some good skill positions coming back on offense. Their defense should be pretty solid. And so I think that's a team to look out for out west. But again, just trying to look at some different teams in different conferences, trying to get a feel for what to expect maybe early on in the season. So we'll be talking about that more in the coming weeks as we get closer to some of the kickoffs. So again, the first game's be coming in about roughly 25 days. So of course, we'll have to keep an eye on some of the fall camp. You got some interesting things. Look at some different teams. You got some teams that are obviously going through some different quarterback battles, so we'll keep an eye on that as well. But again, as we get into next week and as we get closer to the season, we'll kind of get more in depth and talk about some of the teams in detail as far as what to look for and maybe some things to focus on.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for the college football season. I would say more so than the NFL season, at least for the first half, because I'm really excited to see how, number one, Alabama is able to bounce back from a national championship loss like that, and how, we obviously know they're going to go undefeated up until, they have to, go to the SEC championship. That's when we really have to start questioning things like that. But how big are their point differentials going to be, right? So that's that. I want to see my dark horse candidate for the SEC, which is Florida. I want to see how well they perform, because that's definitely my dark horse this year. I would say, I wanted to put LSU up there, but I would say they are too much of like above dark horse. Like, they're obviously going to be good, but they're just not going to be as good as Georgia and Alabama. So I wouldn't even put them in that kind of category. And then I also want to see, which is probably like the number one thing I want to see, because everything else is kind of set in stone. The number one thing I want to see, though, is how Jalen Hurts does at Oklahoma. How does he do by himself? Like, how does he just do by himself as a quarterback now that has been fully developed last year? How does he do? That's going to be very good to see. I just cannot wait for the college football season. It's going to be fun. A lot of games are going to be watched this year. I'm going to have no time in my life at all once the season starts, because I'm going to be watching all these games this year. More games than I've ever watched in my whole life. I mean, seriously, it's going to be a great time this year, definitely. All right, so yeah, just switching gears back to NFL for a second. I had a couple, just a couple more topics I wanted to, talk about before, we get totally away from the NFL or, whatever. But, I wanted to mention, a little thing that was being reported on the NFL Instagram and Twitter today. That Julio Jones will not be playing during the preseason games, which I don't know why that comes as a big surprise to anyone. The best receiver in football is not playing in preseason games that don't mean anything and don't reflect performance of how players are going to do in the actual NFL in the actual regular season. So it makes sense. Julio Jones is somebody that always has very significant importance around his injury and around his health. Not that he gets injured all the time. He has had, various injuries, but he's a player that the Falcons will keep out if he has even a minor injury, because he is the best receiver in football, the best player on the Atlanta Falcons, and overall, he's a beast, and they don't want him, hurt at all. So I understand that, and I don't think that should come to a surprise for anybody, NFC South, Falcons fan, NFL fan, whatever. Shouldn't come as a surprise he's not playing during the preseason game. So you're going to have to wait till week 1 if you want to see Julio Jones ball out, which I know I do. Hopefully Calvin Ridley is able to get some, plays in there, because, we saw a lot of Calvin Ridley last season, going deep and things like that. But I want to see more of that. I love seeing Calvin Ridley run those routes and run those zig routes and post routes and things like that, because that was just fun to watch. He did the same thing at Alabama. So it was just so fun to, watch him, because most people don't realize that Calvin Ridley, literally in every game he plays where he goes off for a lot of yards at Alabama or in Atlanta, where he always goes off is in the red zone, and not where the team is in the red zone. I'm talking about when the team is behind their own 40. Calvin Ridley shows off when he's in the red zone. So when he's above the 20, that's when he's doing the stick and moves and the spins and the jukes and all kinds of crazy stuff. That's where I love seeing Calvin, and you don't really get to see a lot of those deep balls and in the preseason, but that's something I would like to see, and that's something that could very be look forward to as a Falcons fan.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons, they have a chance to have one of the very best, if not the best, offense in NFL this year. And if you look at all their skill players on that side of the ball, they can just attack you so many different ways. You got guys like Devonta Freeman come out of the backfield.
Who's back after
who's back. Missing. He's a guy that's always a threat to break a big one. Not only that, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. If you get him out in some open space, he can put some moves on people and make some big plays.
He's also a power back at the same time.
Yeah, and then you got as far as the short and medium range passing game, you got Hooper, excuse me, Austin Hooper there, who's a very good tight end. You got like Sanu.
Sanu on those drag routes.
He's great on those kind of routes. Then you got a guy that you can, like Julio, you can get the ball to. Julio doesn't run a lot of deep routes, but what he's really good at is catching the outs and the slants.
Oh, yeah.
And getting out in space and making guys miss. And he's got the speed once he does that, and he can basically race people to the end zone.
He's the best tool now for keeping single coverage on him or Calvin Ridley. He's the best tool now for just opening up the Falcons' offense, which is something that the Falcons lacked with just Julio. That's always why they couldn't make it to the playoffs, is because their offense had the best wide receiver in football, but they can never open up the offense enough because everybody is double, triple covering Julio Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, now you have Austin Hooper, Sanu, Devontae Freeman, and Calvin Ridley to cover all together.
So you got those guys, you got Julio dragging across the middle. That means they got to keep safeties down to watch for that, and that really opens up for Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley is, his specialty for that team is going to be the deep ball threat.
I know, the red zone, just when he's in that zone.
He is a great deep route runner. That's probably what he does best. He can catch the short passes and run the medium routes as good as anybody. He that's what he did primarily at Alabama. But I think his biggest thing that he brings to the offense is his ability to run great deep routes and get open and catch those balls.
Of course.
So the Falcons can attack you several different ways, and if Matt Ryan is on and they don't have the injuries they had last year, they're going to be easily one of the top 2 or 3 offenses.
Fun team to watch, and we only brought that up because of Julio Jones not participating in the preseason games, but like we said, it's just he doesn't need to do this, and that's what it takes to preserve this kind of offense. So it's gonna be a fun team to watch, definitely. Very excited for that. Last topic that I have today for the NFL that I brought up is actually for all of our Last Chance U fans out there, for anybody that watched that show, especially the first 2 seasons when they were at East Mississippi Community College. Ronald Ollie, the defensive tackle from EMCC in the former seasons of Last Chance U, has been cut from the Raiders practice squad is in hopes to find a new team. So for those of you that didn't know, Ronald Ollie was like the star of Last Chance U, the first 2 seasons at least. I didn't actually watch the second season. I believe he was still in there for the second season. I'm not 100% sure, but I know he was at least in there for the first season at EMCC. With head coach Buddy Stevens, who was, terrifyingly aggressive. But Ronald Ollie was a beast. Watching Last Chance U, he was funny. He was almost like an actor. He was comedic relief, and he was just all around great guy. He was trying to pull his grades up so he could graduate and get out of there and make it to a D1 school. And eventually, he was able to make it out, and he was able to get into the NFL. But he made it onto a practice squad, which was for the Raiders. So that was big news when that happened a few months ago. I think it happened. We talked about it on our last podcast, which is way back in like March or April or something, and that's when that happened. Now he's off, but he's off the Raiders practice squad, and I would expect any other team in the NFL to pick up Ronald Ollie. His stats aren't something that are very noticeable or anything like that, but just from watching Last Chance U, just from seeing how good this guy is in the locker room, and just how much of a big threat he is on the D line for somebody that is a depth player, obviously, because he's not a starting NFL player at the moment. But I feel like somebody has to pick this guy up. Even Bo Scarborough, who's a great running back, one of the best, that has been in Alabama in the last 10 years. We love watching Bo. He went to 3 different practice squads. So somebody's got to pick Ronald Ollie up because I just don't really see how he can go off the Raiders and never make it back to a practice squad. So that's pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool to kind of pick up because a lot of people didn't even know he made it to a practice squad anyway. But he did make it. He made it to the Raiders practice squad. So if he can get signed, if he can just sign a contract, he's made it, and that will ice on the cake what the what the whole show Last Chance U was about, just giving these guys a second chance and ultimately getting these guys to go to the NFL. Really, it was just about getting these guys to a D1 school, not necessarily about getting them to the NFL, but that's the ultimate goal, and that's what you want. So that's really just the thing we want to see Ronald Ollie get signed to another team, off a practice squad. So that would be very cool. I know this year they had a player from EMCC, I believe it was EMCC, get drafted in 2019, in the 2019 NFL draft. It was in the 7th round. I think it was a linebacker. So that was a player that got drafted. I'm not sure if he signed, but Ronald Ollie, being the first, the debut star Last Chance U, that's somebody we want to see sign. So I thought that was pretty cool little, just a tiny little topic that I could bring up for you guys, and that was pretty cool. All right, what else we got on the agenda?
Well, talking about NFL, as we, going through the training camps and we're getting ready for the first preseason games, looking at the NFL news and see what's being talked about, you see a lot of news stories focusing mainly on guys who are some of the top players coming back. They're guys that are kind of being held out because they have minor injuries or recovering from injuries from last year. Teams are wanting to be careful with them and not overdo it, and certainly not want to put them out there and risk injury before the first regular season games come up. So you have it going on. You have some guys that are holding out, and why guys wait the entire spring and summer right before the beginning of training camp, decide they want to hold out. And then just wait till the end to decide that they want to negotiate a new contract or extend the contract or whatever the case may be. I'm not sure, but I just think about all that, and I'm just wondering, and this is something that's been talked about on and off for several years now, but do we have too many preseason games? Because a lot of your top players, a lot of your starters are not going to play much in preseason. And the preseason, the games aren't really made for them. The games are kind of there, I guess, to find out, who's going to be your key backups, figure out, what players who might be on the board are going to make the roster and who won't. And that's what mainly these preseason games are for. NFL, of course, uses it to make some extra money. Of course, a lot of these games are televised. They can still sell tickets to these games and people will buy them and they make money off that as well and everything. But recently it's been proposed that maybe the NFL should expand the regular season and play an 18-game schedule instead of 16. And I'm thinking it kind of makes sense. I mean, why not do that? And maybe play an 18-game schedule, but maybe limit your starters to 16 games. In other words, each starter, would be automatically held out for 2 regular season games, and teams can obviously choose when to do that.
That would be really weird. Like, I think about that all the time now after that's been proposed, and it seems like something out of a video game, out of where you would have to. Pick
and then maybe shut down the preseason games, maybe to 2 or 3 at the most. I mean, because do you really need 4 preseason games to get ready for the season, or to determine who's going to be playing for you or who's going to be your most important players? I don't think so. I mean, most of these teams, most of these coaches have probably already kind of determined that before they even play the first preseason game. So, I mean,
I think the preseason games, you said they're, to test depth and, kind of see how the team looks before a game. I think it kind of relies more on, looking at depth, right? I think that's the sole reason.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, we already have games. What about the guys, what about the teams that absolutely go, just completely defeated the entire season? Like, looking at the Browns, and then at the end, they always play the Steelers towards the end of the season. Like the Falcons always play the Buccaneers and things like that. They always play Steelers at the end of the season. And I have a lot of friends that are up there in Pittsburgh and go to those games where the Browns and the Steelers play at the end of the season. And it was, when the Browns were losing, of course, it was always the Browns were just putting in their backups and the Steelers were putting in their backups too. It's like they already have these games where, or some teams do, where they test this depth. So yeah, I'm saying we can take out these two games, these two preseason games. We don't need those. We can leave the games at the end of the season where teams already test out depth. And plus, if you were going to add two more regular season games onto that, where starters could only play 16, that would be something else. You'd have two games for the best team, like the Patriots. Obviously, the Patriots aren't going to put in their backup for anything,
Right.
but if your starters can only play 16, then the best team would have two games
Well,
to
everybody knows.
put in their depth.
Every team knows who their best players are, and you can look at your schedule and you can figure out, particularly if you're one of the better teams, you can figure out, well, this is the team that we should be. This is the team where we probably should be. And you can pick games where you may can hold out some of your starters and do it like that. But as far as the preseason, it has a purpose, and particularly at least the first couple weeks of the preseason, people are excited to watch it. It's football, it's back. But after about the first or second quarter, after that, unless you're an actual fan of the team you're watching, nobody cares, because after the first couple of quarters, there's nobody out there playing except a bunch of backups and scrubs and guys who aren't going to make the final 53-man roster anyways. So, do you really need a whole month worth of preseason games to determine who your backups are going to be? I don't think so. I think it should be capped at year 2 or maybe 3 preseason games at the most, and maybe because I don't know any team or any fan, I should say, that's an NFL fan that likes watching the games. I don't know anybody who would be against more games. That doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean you have to play your starters for 18 games. Maybe have a limit like on 16, and maybe hold them out for a couple games. That's what the NBA does. The season is so long, they play 82 games. But how many players in the NBA play 82 games? Practically nobody. Even the top players, they're usually going to probably miss 8, 10, 12 games along the way here and there where they get rest. So.
And in basketball, one player, LeBron James makes a huge difference on a team where there is no LeBron James. And in football, it's, if that's the case in basketball, then how is that going to be in football? So I think I like that idea. I like the 18-game rule. Not because it's more games, because personally I don't really care about that. Like I said many times, I'm a Falcons fan. I can't watch any Falcons games though. I literally can only watch the ones that are in prime time or where they're playing the Buccaneers, because we're in the Tampa area. I already can only watch like half of the Falcons games. So having more wouldn't really be something that I'm have any opinion about. But what I do like is that would add another layer of strategy over how games are planned out and picked, because you would have to pick these two games where you wouldn't have to where you couldn't put your starters in. So I think it would be cool to look at a game where we play the Buccaneers and they have Devin White now. So the Falcons are like, okay, well this game, I know the Bucs defense is good. We play them at the end of the season, but let's say they're like 14-2. So they're going to go to the playoffs and probably have a chance at the Super Bowl. But they're like, well, we can't put Julio in this game, so let's take him out. Well, you take Julio out of a a defense like that, or Calvin Ridley's a starter, so you take him out too, and you leave maybe Sanu and Austin Hooper against the Bucs defense now, which is pretty good. They have Sue and Vita Vea and Devin White. Seeing that, like, they could have a chance to take the Falcons off. Or something like that. And obviously if they're 14-2, it's not going to matter, but that just adds like another layer of strategy. That's like wow, we could actually have these players actually make a difference in game speed, because when you're in the preseason, it's like watching the Pro Bowl. These guys literally just walk around and push each other, like that's it, and there's no real tackling. So I think that would be like adding two preseason games to the end that actually matter. That's at full game speed, because you're not going to get any kind of practice for a game unless you're playing a game. That's just how it is. You have to be playing a game.
And also,
speed.
too, the way it is now, if you're a team that's really good and you get to the last couple weeks of the season, especially the last week, and you know that you're already in the playoffs, and your playoff position is not going to really be determined if you win or lose that last game, you're seeing a lot of teams now that they'll take several of their starters and just hold them out because they don't want them to get hurt. And honestly, they're playing the game that it really doesn't matter if they win or lose. So, you already have teams that kind of do that a little bit anyway. So, why not just make it a rule and just have an 18-game season? And really, with the number of teams in the league now, It's almost a necessity.
I think it would be better for football in general. I
Well, it
mean,
would, and we've had a 16 game season since 1978.
1878.
So for 40 years
40
now,
years.
we've had a 16 game season, and of course the league is over the years as they have added more teams. They of course have had to add more games and have a longer schedule. I mean, if you don't play a representative number of games based on the number of teams in your league, can you really determine who a true champion is going to be? So I think time for them to seriously explore that option. I know a lot of the players are against it. I know the players' union is against it. But if you have a cap on how many players or how many games a player can play, then to me, I think it's a win-win. As far as the players versus the league, I think both can win if they have the 16 game cap rule in place for a particular player.
I think surprisingly, I think a lot of NFL players would agree with you. And I think a lot of people right out of the gate say that a lot of players would dislike this rule and there was no way they would support it. I think a lot of players would like this rule. I'm not like a lot of players in the NFL play for money, right? Like that's not a bad thing to say. They're in there, they're making money. That's what the NFL is for. It's for to play.
That's what they all
make
say.
money.
They say the NFL is the business.
Exactly.
So.
But some of those guys are in there because they love the game of football. Pat
Yeah.
Mahomes
Yeah.
loves the game of football. If he didn't, he wouldn't have been standing behind Alex Smith for that long. And we didn't know that he was going to be the best quarterback we've ever seen in our entire life. I mean, nobody knew that. He just came out of the gate and did that. And obviously it's because he loves football. If he knew he was that guy, he would have been like, okay, I'm going to a different team. I'll see. I'm going to the Dolphins or something like that. But he didn't. He stayed behind Alex Smith, and along with all these other guys that do that. It's because they love the game of football. So I guarantee you somebody like Pat Mahomes would love that rule. Any player that loves, just to play the game. I'm sure somebody like Calvin Ridley would probably think the same thing. Cam Newton or somebody like that, Eddie Jackson. Those players would probably, love this rule and, wouldn't have no problem playing another 2 games. I'm sure a lot of coaches would like that too to, test out their depth and, add that, new layer of kind of, thinking about who I should put here and, why my starter shouldn't be here. I think the rule is really looked at by it has a negative connotation to it because people just automatically assume players don't want more games and that the NFLPA is against it, which is true. The NFLPA is against it, but I think there's a lot of players that would support it. So I think we seriously as a whole community in football, we need to take a huge look at this rule. Players, fans, coaches, owners, whatever. Even if you're not in the NFL, college, whatever, everybody needs to put their opinion out on it, and we need to get a general consensus over how everybody feels about this this rule and how players are going to react to it. Because I think it would change football. I think it would be great for football. When you don't have the AAF anymore and you don't have a way for players to get a shot directly into the NFL, this is something that you need. You need extra leeway. You need extra room for people to make it in. I think that there are too many players that are probably NFL worthy that don't get a chance to prove their talent. If I had to give one example, A.J. McCarron. I think A.J. McCarron should be a starter. I think a lot of people would say the same thing. I know the Bills management thinks that A.J. McCarron should be a starter, but they couldn't make him that at the time. I know a lot of people think that he should be a player that's able to be QB1. And maybe that's something we'll see in the future with these rules. With this new schedule, hopefully that's something that happens, and hopefully it's in our lifetime. Hopefully it happens in the next 5-10 years, because that's something we want to see. That's something that would be kind of cool. I think it would be a great replacement for these really negative placed preseason games at the beginning that are just boring to watch. That are just eye closers. Nobody even wants to watch them. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. I would really like to see that in the NFL. I think a lot of people would agree with me too. All right, so I guess that is all for today. That's all for the football forecast. If you have anything to add before we go.
No, I think we're good. Like I said, we got some other things to talk about, but we'll delve more into some specific issues as we get closer to the kickoff of both the NFL and college football seasons. And of course, anything newsworthy that happens, we'll always be open and willing to talk about those items. But we're getting excited here. We're getting ready for the first NFL preseason games, and we're just looking forward to the start of the season, and it'll probably be here before you know it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm so excited for NFL, college, everything. There's gonna be a lot of football to watch this year. I said that before. I mean it. Like, I'm gonna watch so much football this year. I honestly cannot wait. Hope you guys feel the same way. Hope everybody watching feels the same exact way. I hope you guys love football as much as we do. And like I said, we're trying to build a huge community here. So we want you to interact with us. So we didn't get anybody in the YouTube chat this time. We have one person actually. Sorry about that. We have one person say hi, but we want some more people, coming into the YouTube chat, coming in on Facebook, saying, what's up? Give us some topics to talk about, some interactions and things like that. Because, like I said, we're trying to build a community, people that love football, that love college football, that love NFL, and we're just trying to build a group, just a community of people that feel so strongly about the sport.
Absolutely, we want to. We definitely enjoyed the interaction. We want people who enjoy talking ball to hit us up and just ask us questions about what we think about different teams, players, coaches. Maybe give some projection about how we might think certain teams or players might perform the upcoming season. Even maybe look at some early season games, important games early in the season, both NFL and college. All those things are things that we would love to talk about. So anybody has any specific questions, we'll be glad to tackle those, whatever you might have on your mind.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also for our younger dudes, I know a lot of you guys know what Discord is if you're watching, so we have a Discord link in the description if you want to go ahead and join our server. And there I'll be posting all kinds of news, updates, and things like that. And also, one thing I wanted to mention before we leave off here is something I'm planning, something big. We got to hurry, though, because we don't have much time. I usually have done it by now, but fantasy football. We got to get on that because we don't have a big community right now that was, as big as our last podcast. But in our last podcast, I wanted to do something where I could get everybody in our community to join in the fantasy football league. Now we don't have much time and we don't have a lot of people. So if you want to join the fantasy football league that we're going to start, comment and I will hook you up. Just comment something. I'll respond to you and get your information. We'll, link up and I'll get, I'll be able to DM you and we'll talk about it and I'll get you in. And I'll do some kind of prize pool if I can do it. But I would love to do a fantasy football with you guys. And in the Discord, we can sit there all night on the draft night and we can talk about it and, just have fun and whatever. It's going to be fun time with fantasy football. I really hope that is a way to grow our community very fast. And, if you like what you see here, go ahead and share it. Share it to anybody that you know that loves football, old, young, man, woman, whatever. Go ahead and share it. We're looking for a community. We want to build people. And I need people in my fantasy football league, but not too many because I'm going to draft Julio, pick one. And if anybody else does that, I'm just going to have to block you off of YouTube. But for episode number 2, that's pretty much it. And, I think we covered a lot today. Pretty good episode. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. And we will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. See you guys.